Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. As Catherine said, my name is Zach Cutler. I'm a senior partner with McKinsey, and I'm thrilled to be here for this discussion with you, Michele. A lot has been made, as we've talked about earlier, as the previous discussion about Canada's energy sector and the role it will play in the nation's economy. Right now represents about 10% of our GDP. We produce nearly 5 million barrels of oil a day. We're in the top 5 globally of energy production, and it's our largest exported product. But as we've been challenged by tariffs and economic uncertainty, there's been a renewed focus on the energy sector. And so I'm thrilled you're here to join us to discuss it, your experience really across the full gambit of the energy sector in North America, from Canada's oil sands to refining and retail fuels, to running midstream business in the Gulf Coast, and now back to running the utility for Enbridge. It's wonderful to have you. I couldn't think of someone with a better perspective to share on this topic. So to get us started, Michele, maybe in one word, as the audience, for the audience here with maybe different backgrounds, maybe just in one word, sum up where Canada sits in our energy sector now globally.
You know, Zach, I'll go rogue on you right off the start and say 2 words: unrealized and underappreciated.
Okay, share more.
So unrealized, globally, the potential for the global potential we have to improve quality of life around the world, and what our natural resources can do for that, and absolutely underappreciated here in Canada. It's as the key economic driver, it is our largest industry, and the value, quite frankly, that it contributes to Canadians' lives every day that gets completely taken for granted.
So it sounds like then, Michele, you would say that Canada's probably fallen behind where our potential could be, and I don't know if your view is that that's accelerated in recent years or how it sits, but maybe talk about some of the challenges that are preventing us from realizing the full potential of the sector globally.
You know, I think, and I'll go back to that economic driver. So I think a lot of Canadians think of energy as the output of economic policy, and they really need to start understanding and recognizing the driver it is, the input it is into economic activity, and natural gas in particular. And I think around the world, folks would just kill for the energy that we have and the opportunity that we have right here in Canada. So certainly that demand for that energy around the world, but I'll give you an example right here in Canada. So Enbridge Gas is North America's largest natural gas utility. We bring natural gas into more than 7 million homes, schools, businesses around North America. Our largest footprint is right here in Ontario. We started here 177 years ago with 12 street lamps that are just down the street from us right now. We have the largest, most heavily traded natural gas hub in North America in southwestern Ontario, just on the north shore of Lake Erie. And there's 300 billion cubic feet of storage capacity there. It props up the middle of the continent. Recently, just last year, we delivered a new transmission project to bring some of that natural gas and access to that in through that southwestern Ontario region. It was a $350 million investment by us, so a relatively moderate investment, certainly by Enbridge standards. And it generated, it's absolutely factual, agreed, everybody accepts it generated $4.5 billion in investment in automotive, in power generation. We have one of the largest greenhouse footprints in North America down in that region, and they need that natural gas. $4.5 billion of investment in Ontario generated from a $350 million natural gas pipeline and that access to that natural gas. Over 7,000 jobs created. Not building the pipeline, but over 7,000, jobs created in that industry.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, you listed off a number of facts that I would bet a lot of people, even locally, have no idea of the scale and the importance of it. So maybe if we think about some of the challenges that maybe are preventing us from doing more of what you're describing, what comes to mind?
Well, what I would say is, so, I mean, energy contributes 10% of our GDP here in Canada. It's a third of our exports. It's almost 1 million jobs. And it is still, and I still define it as underdeveloped and unappreciated. We have absolutely fallen behind our global peers. We've had multiple efforts at being an energy superpower. I've heard that my whole career. And we still can't get ourselves there. We move forward and we go backwards. My boss, our Enbridge CEO, was speaking at an event here in Toronto last week, and he referred to the last decade as a competitive disaster for Canada. And we're simply not moving. He would say we're not moving fast enough. My argument is I'm not even sure we're moving in the right direction yet. When we have a lot of high-level talk right now about infrastructure and grand bargains, but there's still a theme, if you listen closely, around what I call bespoke regulation for every project. They're like, well, we'll see. We'll see this project, and we'll decide on a case-by-case basis whether we endorse this project. That is simply not what it takes to get investment into Canada. I even go back to early in my career, I worked for Shell Canada. So I was interviewing with them in the late 1990s, and at that time, we were majority owned by Royal Dutch Shell, but had minority shareholders. We acted completely independently. So I said, so what is the relationship with Royal Dutch Shell? And this would have been November of 1997. And the answer I got from from the EVP who was interviewing me at the time was, well, Royal Dutch Shell, they still see us as a hostile nation to do business in. We're Canada. What are you talking about? And it was after the National Energy Program. I mean, any program where they seize your assets, quite frankly, it kind of turns you off of investing there. But we climbed our way out of that. We really did through the 2000s. I mean, I wound up going to work for Shell, and we developed what was the first oil sands project in 20 years. But then we've done it to ourselves again. We just can't. We want to treat everything on a case-by-case basis, and we can't do that because that's simply not what it takes to attract capital investment in the country.
So it sounds like some self-inflicted wounds maybe have prevented us. What if we flip it to maybe the more positive view of this, which is, we have some undeniable advantages. Some of our reserves of energy, our natural resources broadly, our educated workforce, but we haven't really tapped into it. What, in your view, is Canada's special advantage that we should be tapping into more?
Canada has a number of just phenomenal advantages. I mean, if you want to talk resources, I was born on the east coast of Canada. You drive along the coastal roads, the trees grow sideways because of the wind. I mean, we've got 40+ projects for offshore wind on the east coast. We, in Canada, for those of you who might not be familiar, we don't refer to the companies as electricity companies, we refer to them as hydro companies. It was Ontario Hydro when I was growing up, Quebec Hydro, BC Hydro, because of that non-emitting, I think the previous speaker spoke to more than 80% of our electricity comes from non-emitting sources. Nuclear here in Ontario is just a fantastic program. I mean, we're leading the way on SMRs. We are the world's second largest producer of uranium in Saskatchewan. We have the 4th largest oil reserves globally out west. And we are one of only 2 democracies in the top 10 of oil-producing countries in the world. We're the 5th largest producer of natural gases. I mean, those natural resources are right there. And I'm just talking energy. I'm not even talking about mining and all the other things that we can be doing. But I think we need to focus on that duty we have to share this huge pool of resources we have, and quite frankly, the huge pool of talent we have in Canada. We've stepped up to help the world before, whether that was being early in on World War II, in the 50s, go back to the Pearson peacekeeping efforts. 1990, Brian Mulroney, a previous prime minister of ours, led the world in opposition to apartheid. We have to accept that we have these amazing resources, and we have to nurture the talent that we have. I've worked certainly across North America and a number of countries around the world. We have one of the best education programs, post-secondary education, absolutely some of the best trades. We don't have enough of them, just like everybody else, but we have some of the best training for trades there are. When I know that I'm getting a Canadian tradesperson, I know what I'm getting. Same thing with a Canadian engineer. But we have allowed a brain drain. If we've either not developed it, we've starved our universities and post-secondary education facilities in the last few years, or we've allowed the brain drain. I'm an engineer by training, and I still get upset, and this happened before I was born. We had a program called the Avro-Aero program, and this was developing what would to this day be absolutely first-class jet fighters. They were capable of Mach 2, and that was in the 1950s. And in 1959, we shut down the program, we sank the planes that we had, and we destroyed the blueprints. Yep. And those engineers that were on that program right here in Toronto then went to NASA, and they were founders of the Gemini and Apollo space programs. I mean, that's what they did. We lost them. We have the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, right here in Toronto. I worry so much that we're going to do the same thing. We'll see that same brain drain, folks. The talent will go where the roles are, where the opportunity is. And having lived and worked in both sides of the border for most of my career, we need to figure out who we are and what we want, I'll call it our ecosystem to be. I mean, this isn't necessarily energy related, but living in the US, it becomes very apparent that they are innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem oriented. And that survives different governments. I mean, obviously you see a lot of different policies with different governments, but that fundamental, we will and have had for decades, if not hundreds of years, an ecosystem that supports that. So what's our ecosystem that we're going to support, and what do we have that can survive those changes in government?
I think it's great. Maybe I go back to where you started, Michele. And you did a really nice job of, and I know you spent time across Canada, but also articulating some of the different benefits or resources that each province has to offer. And we was in a roundtable here yesterday, and one of the attendees from Europe referred to Canada almost as the Europe of North America, where we have different provinces and different regional interests. Yep. And I would love to hear your perspective just on how we maybe use this moment and energy to maybe unite the country in a bit of a different way than we historically have been able to.
Well, certainly. I mean, I think that's a reflection of our federal structure that we have. I would call it a design challenge. I wouldn't call it a weakness. I think it is what we have. And I do think we have this moment right now for all of us to work together. We need to get those shared goals across governments, across regulators, and very, very importantly, across our Indigenous communities as well, and with our Indigenous partners. We have to respect those regional strengths. I think we can do that with an all-of-the-above approach. I really believe we're starting to see a rebalancing. We've really seen a pendulum swing in so many things over the last decade, and so many policy issues, but including energy. The pendulum has swung back and forth and back and forth. Instead, I think it's really important, and we're seeing the world, and Canadians, importantly, think of it as a three-legged stool around the affordability, reliability, and sustainability of the energy that we're developing, and importantly, the energy the world needs. And actually, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that more and more what we're seeing under that, I'll call it under that reliability piece, is a link between energy security and national security. Right. So it's a big opportunity for us. And Canadians want responsible bids that share benefits, that deliver results. I think it's important too that we remember that I say this a lot. Sustainability is incredibly important, but let's be clear: sustainability is not only about the environment; it's about the economy, it's about communities, it's about families. So we need to grab this opportunity, and I've used it probably one too many times in my career, which is never waste a good crisis. So let's use that opportunity for us to unite. But I think we also have to be very pragmatic about where our customers are. The 90% of our oil flows south. So to think that we're going to fundamentally reset that demand, we're talking about sitting on top of the world's largest economy. Any country in the world would trade places with us in a heartbeat. So rather than fighting it, let's figure out how we work with it.
Yeah. I love the frame, don't waste a good crisis, and I think it's entirely apt for the moment we're at in Canada now, and some would say we've been awakened to a challenge that we've been facing for far too long. And we've seen a lot of stuff, I will call it, come out of that, a lot of different priorities and opportunities to do it. And the feedback we often get is we need to prioritize, we need to focus and move forward on things with pace. And so in your view, Michele, what do you think the top priorities should be for Canada as we move the sector forward?
Well, certainly when it comes to energy, I mean, we're going through a transformation. There's no question about that. Global investment in energy around the world, it's in the trillions of dollars. And I think it's very important we recognize, and I think the previous speakers spoke to that, the world is competing for that capital. Where I would challenge her is in 2024, maybe $85 million was invested in Canada. We invested $20 million in the US buying natural gas utilities there because there was more certainty of return on and return of our capital in doing that. That's $20 million that didn't get invested here because we are fiduciaries for our shareholders. We act in their best interest. By the way, those shareholders, we are held in virtually every pension plan in Canada, increasingly in the US and around the world. We do that because we take that responsibility very seriously, and we invest where we can be certain that we are going to get returns on that capital, and we're going to get the capital back. So we have to make Canada a welcoming environment for investment again. There's not enough capital for us to do what we need to, and on our own, nor should the government be trying to fund this. But if we want to attract private capital, it has to come with that certainty. So we need those conditions for success. We need the regulatory and policy environment that enables the investment. We need to let actual markets and actual demand guide the routes, guide the capabilities. And again, those investors need certainty of the return on and return of their capital. And that certainty has to survive changes in government. It can't be bespoke every time you come forward with a project. Let's see. And I can tell you that at this point in time, the certainty that the energy sector has in Canada is we won't know for a long time. We want to get to a yes, or quite frankly, a no is fine too, but we want to get to it in a reasonable period of time, and we know we won't do that. That's what we're certain of right now. And again, I would just remind that those investors are not just faceless entities or companies. They are people. They are pension holders. You know, I'll use our Northern Gateway pipeline, which is now being discussed again or proposed something similar by the government of Alberta. We brought it all the way through the process, and we definitely weren't perfect as we went through the process, especially when it comes to Indigenous consultation. But at the end of the day, the support was there from all the communities. We got there. The support, we were approved by the Canadian Energy Regulator. We spent over $500 million of our shareholders, pension holders' money, and it was canceled by the federal government. They said no. Well, okay, you don't do that again anytime soon. We have to be responsible with that money.
Yeah. So maybe just let me pick up on that one, and I'll go a little bit rogue on you on this one, Michele. But okay. What is different or needs to be different this time? You talked about Northern Gateway, but as you think about just where we are now, and if this really is our moment, how do you think about what needs to be different now versus the last time Northern Gateway came up? Just use as an example to really seize the moment for Canada.
Well, I certainly think we are in a great space. As I said earlier, Canadians are agreeing. They're recognizing the value of the energy that we have both domestically and globally. We have spent a lot of time, we spent the last decade turning our noses up at that. We just have not been willing to accept that that's there, that that's a resource. And I think what particularly upsets me as somebody who's been in this for more than a quarter of a century, just how responsible of operators we are. I would challenge anybody, any jurisdiction to say that they operate and develop these resources more responsibly than Canada. We are excellent at what we do, and we do it incredibly responsibly. So we have spent too long asking if Canada should prioritize energy. The answer is yes. The answer is it's urgent. I mean, look at what they've done in the U.S. in the last 9 months. Look at what they've done in the last 9 months. A decade ago, when I actually first joined Enbridge, we were looking at 6, 8 LNG facilities off the West Coast. We've got one going so far. In that same time, the U.S. has gone from no LNG on the Gulf Coast to 8 operating, 8 under construction, and a further 10 approved. I mean, we need the Abrero to get us there. We need to go at Mach 2, really, we do, to be able to develop. So I think that we need to create the path where there's that clarity of capital investment. We need to get the bespoke regulation out of the way and be clear on consistency. That's what investors like.
That's great. I do find some irony in the LNG, by the way. Just as we talked about this, we were kind of first ones there, and now the U.S. has really passed us by, and in effect use Canadian natural gas to consume domestically in the U.S., well, they export U.S. natural gas at export pricing, right?
Here, I'll go on. One of the things that I learned about when I went to my initial role with Enbridge was actually for our Western Canadian assets. There are two massive basins at the north end of British Columbia, the Horn and Liard River basins. There is enough natural gas there to take care of North America's energy needs just in those two basins for the next 150 years. So a decade ago, when we realized we weren't going to get off the West Coast, we realized they're not competitive. They're the furthest away from the big markets. I mean, it's as far away from New York as you can get, as an example. And the Marcellus and other, the associated gas out of those plays was happening. But if we really stop and think about where are the markets? Where are the markets? There's the US that we're displacing already, but we're going to Asia. I mean, those 26 eventually LNG facilities on the US Gulf Coast, they've got the clear path to Europe. Our opportunity is to go off the West. Do it responsibly. Again, I can't reiterate that enough. Do it in partnership with our Indigenous communities. We just announced a partnership on our West Coast pipeline, which is what I used to operate, to sell 11% of it to about, I think it's about 40 Indigenous communities in BC. That allows them to see the benefits immediately, not a promise of a future project, but there are lots of future projects we could do too.
All right, well, I love it. Maybe just to close here in our last minute, Michele, if there's kind of one message that you'd like to leave the audience with and Canadian business and political leaders on the energy sector in Canada, what would it be?
Well, I would certainly say we're facing another pivotal moment. I would really love it as a 16th generation Canadian to see us get out of our own way. We've got to get out of our own way. We've got to break down regional barriers. We've got to come together across ideological perspectives. We cannot be short-term in our thinking here. And we absolutely should have the confidence that we have the talent and the ability to build something lasting that allows Canadians to show both global and local leadership. And we can do that by making responsible local and global contributions.
That's great. Well, with that, we'll wrap it up there, Michele. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you all for just being.
My pleasure.
Thank you.